Well, hi. Thanks for joining me. Scoot up and listen with me to some of the words that Jesus spoke a long time ago. You know, he had a lot to say about money and possessions. Of course, they're not just about things, there are generally heart issues involved in all of this. But in Matthew chapter 25, there's something that's titled the Parable of the Talents. And I'd like to just get this before us here today. So if you've got a Bible and you'd like to read along with me, it's in Matthew 25, and I want to pick out verses 14 to 29. It goes like this. Again, it will be like a man going on a long journey, who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents of money, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received the 5 talents went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more. So also the one with 2 talents gained 2 more. But the man who had received the 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 talents brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come, share your master's happiness. The man with 2 talents also came. Master replied, you entrusted me with 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who had received the 1 talent came. Master, he said, I knew that you were a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your talent in the ground. See, here's what belongs to you. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown, gather where I have not scattered seed? Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned I would have received it back with interest. Take the talent from him, give it to the one who has 10 talents. For everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, and even what he has, will be taken from him. And throw the worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Wow, that seems harsh, doesn't it? But there are some beautiful lessons in it and some practical things for us to know about. So what I want you to see in this, first of all, is in this verse 29 there of the parable that Jesus tells us, everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. That's what it says. So what we're really talking about, of course, is Christian stewardship. It probably is a more correct worldview of what we're talking about than money management or even investing, which we always talk about, even though it is all of those things. Everything we gain actually comes from God. We know that. Ultimately, everything is his. We didn't have anything when we came. We're not going to have anything when we leave. So we must manage God's resources well and account to him for how well we do so. The Bible has a lot to say to us about money. For us, it's a medium of exchange, and I can give you some of what I have for some of what you have, and we can make an exchange as long as we agree on the deal and make it fair for both of us. So we are to earn money so that we can take care of our needs and the needs of our family, immediate family especially. And then we are to give money both to God and to the needy as the occasion arises, and to whichever an amount is right. And then also we are to invest it in order to increase our assets. So the first point I want to make has to do with the importance of understanding investment. Interesting word. I have a thing about words. I like to know what they mean and where they come from and what they're composed of. So I'm picking this out now of what Jesus said when he said, "You should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest." Now, Webster's dictionary defines investment as the act of investing. Well, would you know? But specifically, Webster says it's the act of surrounding or blocking up or besieging by an armed force. In other words, you are covering. Or a second definition is laying out of money in the purchase of some kind of property. In other words, it's covering yourself with a place of your own, perhaps. Another meaning is simply invested. Well, that doesn't sound like it helps much, but actually it does. And then a second major category in this definition is the property in which one invests or may invest, also capital, so it's called investment. I have an investment in a piece of property. I have an investment in a rental house, or I have an investment in an account with a bank, whatever. The third thing is that which invests or clothes. In other words, covers. We talk about clothing being vestments. So to invest is to cover yourself, to put on clothes, so to speak, to dress up. Well, not everything is specifically clothes to cover your body. Some of it's to cover your health or to cover your future or to cover your needs or so on. The concept behind the word investment in the sense of putting on clothes and covering yourself is underneath and through it all. So we are to cover or protect ourselves against starvation, exposure, loss, disaster. There's a whole bunch of things. And we can also protect ourselves with the success of increase, and that protects us from the erosion of our assets. Money, in the United States, they've said that it's good to have money erode at about 4 to 5%. Well, that means that in a few years the dollar's not worth what it used to be when we do that. So in order for my dollars to still buy something, I need for them to grow. It takes more of them to buy the same thing, and the only way I can do that is to cover myself, cover my loss in a sense, okay? So here we have the parable of the talents, and it seems to imply that God expects us to invest and increase the resources that he has entrusted to us. Everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has, will be taken from him. Isn't that interesting? So we are to value add it. We are to increase it. We're to make it work for us and for the ultimate owner, the senior partner, so to speak. So the second thing in this is having something to invest then is very important. So he called his servants and entrusted his property to them. And in this case, the property was in the form of talents. In those days, that was an amount of money specifically. So they were to find a way to make it grow. So above and beyond what is needed in my situation, I need to make my money work for me. I mean, I need to make it not only cover my needs, but to protect me against illness or loss or some of those kind of things. So my needs and my expenses must not exceed what my earnings are. Now, the Bible has some principles in it. We are to eat by the sweat of our face. In other words, we're to work in order to be able to eat. And we are to care for our own. We have a responsibility to our family, and that's not just our children and our spouses, but I believe even at some point our aging parents. So we ought to have also something to give to the poor. There will always be somebody that's needy, and when we have an abundance and a little more than what we need, we are to share with someone who doesn't have quite enough. And then, of course, There's the principle of tithing. We owe God 10% of our increase. Now, you don't have to give away your money just because you have some, but you do share 10% of the increase with God. And then, of course, the Bible tells us that we're to pay our debts. Imagine that. That's how we maintain integrity in life, is to be persons of our word and pay people when we told them we would. This whole idea of investing, however, has some risks. And one takes risks at the point of investing. When you invest in a business, you try to make it a manageable risk. But there's always a chance. You could lose, and many do. Similarly, investing in the kingdom is a risk. Jesus said, I tell you the truth, no one who has left home or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or fields for me and the gospel will fail to receive 100 times as much in this present age. Homes, brothers, sisters, mothers, children, fields, and with them persecution. Oh man, isn't that a great return on your investment? But in the age to come, eternal life. Now that passage is found in Mark chapter 10. Kind of an interesting passage to break down and look at. So what we're talking about is that an increase from an investment needs to satisfy more than just greed. One of the problems today that we're talking about capitalism, we're really not talking about capitalism most of the time. We're talking about greed. And the problem is the heart of man is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. If everybody were righteous and just, capitalism would be so wonderful. The problem is not everybody is righteous, and somebody always wants to get ahead by cheating a little bit or stepping on somebody else or taking something that doesn't belong to him. Jesus said, what good is it for a man to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his soul? And then, of course, here's a point. We need to know how to invest wisely. So in the parable before us, Jesus has the master reply, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Now, generally, when we think of this, we think in terms of real estate, and naturally it is real property. And it has intrinsic value. And we like to think that that value is increasing, but most often it's just that money is decreasing. And then, of course, there are things like stocks and bonds. Typically, you buy into another's business, and there is a business that has property, and it has buildings and equipment, and it has potential to earn and so on. And what you're doing is sharing in the investment in order to share in the profit, and that's involved in stocks and bonds. And then there are savings instruments, of course, where you put your money in the bank and they pay you an interest. In the last few years, savings interest has been infinitesimal in this country, so our money has been eroding way faster than what the interest has been producing. But each of these has a place and may prove right for you or for a specific time in your life. But whatever we do, we must be good stewards. So that means use our head, but we must also guard our hearts so that we don't become greedy and careless and selfish and all of those kind of things. Jesus warned us of what to avoid. In Matthew chapter 6, he says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. I talk about these three things being the three witnesses against unwise investments. Moths have a tendency to get out the clothes you're not wearing. They're things that are too nice to wear, and so you have them stored for a long period of time, and moths make their home in them, and they have fun eating at them. Rust generally affects things that are neglected. If you leave your tools out in the rain, don't put them away, they'll rust. And thieves like to take the stuff that's just a cut above what everybody else has because it's a quick sale. and they make a profit. They didn't have anything invested in it really, so but it sells fast, and so thieves like the stuff that's just a little bit better than everybody else has. Now, I've always thought if I can't afford to lose it, I can't afford to have it. So I've been trying to be careful with that. So these are the three witnesses against unwise investments. Jesus also told us that relationships are more valuable than money. And so he says, I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves. Now, that's a form of investing. You cover yourself with goodwill and friendships so that if your money is gone, if you lose everything, you'll be welcomed into eternal dwellings. Oh my, I've got stories about how that works. I know what it's like to have friends who will take you in. You say, okay, but how does one get started with all of this? Well, you might say, I don't have anything left at the end of the month to invest. I'm just barely making ends meet. I spend it all. Well, let's start with that. Maybe we need to monitor our spending. Question is, are you consuming more than necessary? Not necessarily more than you have, but more than necessary. On our trip to Israel not too long ago, I had a group with me, and we were in Old Jerusalem, and I decided I wanted a cup of coffee, and several decided it'd be fun to have a cup of coffee, so we went looking, and I found a place where they were selling coffee for 10 shekels. Well, I wasn't sure went to another place, they wanted 12 shekels for a cup of coffee. Same size coffee, both of them just instant coffee, no big deal. And I thought $3, a little more than $3 was just a little much. And decided I'd keep looking around. So I kept looking around, and I found a cup of coffee for 8 shekels. So I bought that coffee. Came back, and somebody was already drinking one, and they had theirs. I said, what'd it cost you? 12 shekels. And they said, oh. And then what'd yours cost you? 8 shekels. And I said, well, I just thought I'd stop and buy mine. And I said, well, yeah, but you see, I can only spend my money once. So if I don't spend it all in one shot, I've got a little more for another time. And there was a lesson in that. You see, we want to be wise in our spending. And don't just pay because somebody says, well, I'll take this much. I grew up in Central and South America where you're a fool if you don't dicker a little bit and see if the price is firm. Another thing we need to learn how to do is to rein in our appetite. You know, it's easy to have a milkshake if you decide you want to have a milkshake, but if you saved that money, and if you saved on those impulses 1,000 times, you might be able to buy a car for cash or something else. Another thing is to shop wisely, to spend responsibly. We don't need everything we think we need. We don't need everything that somebody wants to sell us. We need to learn how to shop and spend wisely. Oh, and then avoid interest. It's amazing how easy it is to buy something now, even I don't have the money. And because it's borrowed money, I have to pay interest on it. Years ago, I was doing some counseling on money management with a couple in seminary. And they had been to, I think it was the Bon Marché, and it had a display of china out, and they had it on sale, and oh, it was a bargain. And if you laid it away today, if you bought it today, you would just save a great percentage over the cost of the item. And so they bought. But they couldn't pay it off quickly, so it took months to pay it off. I said, well, then you're paying interest, so you probably paid more than the original price, and they couldn't believe it. No, we got a bargain on it. It was on sale. They went home and added it up. They had paid almost twice what that set of china would have cost them if they'd have bought it at the original price. They had paid it in interest. And the store knew what they were doing. They got them. So you want to avoid paying interest. So if you can't afford something now, don't buy it now. Wait. Wait until you have the money. Wait until you can afford it. And then, of course, it's always wise to save a little regularly. You know what? There will be a rainy day. There will be a need that comes along. Oh, the car will break down, or you'll need some medicine and you'll have to have some money to go get it, or you'll need a new pair of shoes. Something always comes up that you didn't plan on. So, on a regular basis, we need to set a little aside and be ready for those kind of emergencies that come in life. But then there's the investments. After our needs are taken care of, after we've paid our tithe, and after we've saved a little bit, when we have just a little bit less left over, we need to put it in a piggy bank, so to speak. The problem with a piggy bank is that it doesn't earn anything in there. So we need to find a way to earn a little bit. You know, it's amazing how if you have a couple of nickels, you can sometimes earn another one. I sometimes invest in a lawnmower or an old car or something that isn't working, fix it up and sell it, and I make just a little money, and I've used that money to go on mission trips, and then I've gone on an awful lot of mission trips. Now let me just be honest with you. You and I are believers. Well, we believe lots of things. I hope you and I both believe God. So if we really are believers, we need to take what God says seriously. You see, faith is an action verb. Faith acts on what God says, either to do or to not do. And when we act upon His word, what we're doing is trusting Him. Martin Luther King Jr. said, faith is taking the first step, even when you can't see the whole staircase. See, our faith results in God's blessing. Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter the joy of your landlord. Here, share the profit with me. I had something happen the other day. I went to a machinist and asked if he could help me grind a crank to clean up a crankshaft for a car, an engine I was rebuilding. And he said, you know, Reverend, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to save a little money. If you'll just take some uric acid and it'll melt the aluminum off of that, and you can clean it up yourself, and it'll be a lot faster than me farming it out to the machinist that turns cranks. And you know, I came home, I have muriatic acid, worked like a charm. He probably saved me $100 or $200. I don't know what it would have been. So I went back and said thank you and handed him a $20 bill. And I said, I just want to say thank you. But I wanted to say thank you in a tangible way. He said, I don't need your money, Reverend. And I said, I know that. But I want to say thank you in a tangible way. You know, sometimes it's a good idea to share in the blessing a little bit, don't you think? And God wants to have us share in the blessing of life as well. Pray with me, would you? Father, thank you. Thank you for these wonderful words, these challenges that Jesus gives us about investing. And so we want to cover ourselves, our needs and those of our family. We want to cover the needs of the poor when we feel impressed to do so. We want to have something to cover ourselves against that rainy day that's coming as well. So guide us by your Spirit and help us to learn how to invest wisely in all of the ways you direct us. And thank you for it. In Jesus' wonderful name, amen. Thanks for joining me today. God bless you.